All right, so here we got a customer of ours with Tein Flex Z's already on this Model 3 standard range, and we're going to be installing the Tein EDFC control unit on top of these coilovers, and we're going to show you what we need to do that. All right, so first thing we need to do is take off the factory adjuster for the Tein coilover. That's this little knob here. And then we need to replace the little Allen piece that's in there. That's this little guy. So we're gonna do that. All right, so our little wrench that Tein supplies doesn't really fit where we need it to, so we're just gonna modify it a little bit so we can better utilize it. All right, so with our modified wrench, we're gonna take this adjuster off. So here's the adjuster, but we still need to get the Allen that's in there out. So we're gonna put the adjuster back in and keep unscrewing. And you'll see that little black piece come out. And that's what we need to replace with the chrome looking one that the EDFC kit comes with. Okay, so before we put this back in, we're gonna put this grease that's supplied with the kit all over this piece so it's well lubricated. Once the servo is mounted, it'll allow this to have a longer life and move real smooth. So in the instructions it states we want to get this down nice and flush with the top of the threaded portion here, so it's nice and flush. I'm just using the adjuster that we pulled out to do that. So it's nice and flush now. All right, our next step is to apply thread locker that the kit is supplied with to the threaded portion here on the outside. That's where the servo is gonna screw onto, but we want to make sure we don't get it into the grease area. We don't want that to be locked. So only on the outside. All right, so we got our servo here. First thing we need to do is place it into the Allen. And then we need to screw the servo down 3 turns so that we have enough room to screw on the servo. Now we can start to rotate the servo on the threads. We want to be careful once it starts binding up. We want to back out the screw even more because it's probably binding there. Make sure it can move freely as you tighten the servo down. So we've reached the bottom of the threads on the servo, but you can see we can still rotate the shaft freely. That's what you want. You don't want this to be bound up. Just gonna snug this up a little bit. We don't want to put too much pressure on the motor. The Loctite should keep this thing nice and snug. Okay, so now we need to get this boot over the top of the servo, and I kind of found the easiest way to do that is to actually put the boot inside out first. So get it inside out. And now you can see where it needs to sit on the top of the servo. And you basically just put it on top and then wrap it around the servo. And then we're also gonna lube up this piece of the wire here so that it can slide down more easily. All right, so with that, we've got the boot all nicely secured and our pigtail coming out, and we'll come back to this later and finish up the wiring. So we're gonna move on to the rear now. All right, so we're at the rear of the car here, and we will actually have to pull the rear damper out in order to get the servo on top, so not quite as easy as we had on the front. So we're gonna go through that. Okay, so we are at the back of the car now. We've already installed the dampers, and we're gonna start with the wiring. We gotta pull off some of these panels, and we have to gain access to the middle of the car area where the penthouse is, the top of the battery. That's where we're gonna pull 12 volts on this Model 3 standard range. If this was a long range model, there would be a subwoofer amplifier right here that we could pull power from, but this car does not have that, so it's a little more complicated on this car. All right, so we've pulled the right side carpet off the trunk area here. And so our goal is to come out of the wheel well down here, and then we're gonna follow this harness up to the top of the battery pack. And that's where we're gonna pull power from. All right, so we're at the driver's side rear wheel well, and we don't have the damper in right now, but we are going to pull this fender liner out so that we can route the wire up to the top of where the damper would go for the servo. So we need to pull this out. There we go, we have access now. And then we're gonna start by pulling this rubber grommet out, and we'll feed our wire through the bottom of it. All right, so we got all the servos in on the dampers, and we're gonna start wiring up the control modules. But before we do that, we're gonna disconnect our 12-volt power source and the high voltage pack, just to be sure we don't accidentally short anything out. So let's get to it. And now we're at the top of the high voltage pack. We're gonna disconnect this connector here. And you can hear a big thunk, and that's the high voltage contactor disconnecting. All right, we're in the back seat of the Model 3 standard range, and we're gonna be pulling 12 volt off of this post here on the top of the high voltage pack. This is coming from the main battery, so it's a good 12 volt source. And we need to go through to the back quarter panel. So we need to pull this trim piece off so that we can route our wire to the trunk. So to pull this thing out, we just need to pull at the top, and it should come out of its snap connector and then slide up like that, and it should come right out. All right, so we got that side trim piece off, so we need to just pull this push clip out, and then we can pull this carpet the rest of the way over, and we'll have full access to the whole quarter panel there. And there we go. There's our harness we were looking at from the other side. So we'll be able to just follow it all the way down to the battery. All right, so just a little overview of what we're doing at this point. We got the rear servo module here. We're gonna take our left servo wire, run it across the bottom of the trunk area here. And then we have our right servo wire. That's gonna stay in this side. And then we're gonna put our module and stick it to the side of the fender down there. And we're gonna go in there with the camera, and you can see where we're gonna put it. We're gonna put it right on top where that grommet is. For our ground source, we're going to use this little bolt right here. That's one of the bolts that holds on the tail light. All right, so we got our module all in there. All the connectors are connected up, left, right, and the power. And we have our red wire here. Big mess. We need to run this through to the front area. We're gonna follow this harness, zip tied to that. All right, so we got a lot of excess wire here. We're just gonna trim this just long enough to get to this post here. We got our Wire nice and trimmed. We still got our fuse in there. Now we're gonna mount it to this post, positive terminal post right here. And we don't wanna use the nut that's holding down the main wire because that would probably cause a bad connection with this little terminal. So we're gonna use another nut on top of it so we don't interfere with the factory nut here. All right, so we got our additional nut here. This is a M8 by 1.25 thread. And we're just gonna put our terminal on and screw that new nut on there. All right, now that we're done with our wiring, we're gonna reconnect the connector on top of the penthouse. And then we're gonna reconnect our 12-volt post. All right, we're at the passenger footwell, and we're gonna go through the process of finding the wire that is ignition. So it'll be a switched power when the car turns on. That way the Tein EDFC unit, it's not on all the time. It'll just turn on when you need it. Okay, so this next part, you're probably gonna need a second person to help you out in finding the correct wire. I think it's this one right here, but we basically need to use our probe, stick it in the wire, and then have someone hit the brake pedal to start the car. And so it should go from 0 volts to 12 volts when the car turns on. So we're gonna try that right now. And there we go. We have our switch power. And he's gonna turn it off. And it goes off. So that's the wire we need right there. All right, so we found our switch power. Now we need to get access to the center console. So we're gonna pull this carpet off here and then pull up the bottom carpet, and we can route our wire over to that wire we just found. Okay, so we pulled our carpet off the side here. So basically we need to get our wire down here, across to the bottom of this carpet and into here. And while you're in here, this is your cabin air filter right here. So this might be a good time for you to change that as well. All right, so going over what we've done so far, we have drilled a hole through the center console. We'll show you a close-up picture of that. And so we have our wire coming out the bottom here for the control module. And now all we have left is we got to put the filter unit and the little power unit. And we're going to stick it to the bottom down here and then run the wire across the carpet into the T-tap that I've put right here on our switched power. So for our ground, we're going to be using this nut right here that's going down in the chassis. We'll just use that for our ground off of our control unit right here. So we did make a change to where I pointed out the ground before. We're actually going to this bolt right here. This one down here isn't really a great way to ground it because the bottom of it's not flat. So this one's a little better. And then we ran our red wire here behind the carpet and into our switched T-tap right here. All right, so we've finished up all the wiring. If you can see down in here, we've stuck the little control module down to the floor. And that's also where the GPS plugs in and the main screen plugs in. So we drilled a hole in the bottom that comes up into the center console right here. And we turn the car on and that turns on. There you go. So the EDFC is online now. You can hear the little servos going. All right, everyone, that concludes our installation of a Tein EDFC kit on the Flex Z coilovers. And this is on a Model 3 Standard Range Plus. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It helps us out a lot, keeps our channel growing, and thanks.